What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com, and today I am looking ahead to the next one championship card. They are on Amazon. Again, it's the 12th card on Amazon, and there's some very good matchups on this. I'm obviously going to be concentrating mostly on the MMA today, but there are some of the other arts also on the card, especially the main event. Roman Krylia is taking on Francesco Zaha. And I know I haven't watched a few of the recent events and seen Krylia fight, and he's heavy-handed and exactly what you would expect from the one heavyweight champion, I suppose, in kickboxing. So that's definitely one to look forward to. And haven't watched a bit of both of them. I suppose you'd have to favour Krylia in a big way to win that one. But there's some grappling also on the card. Tammy Musamechi, who I believe is the twin sister of Mikey Musamechi, is taking on Amanda Alaquin. There's a Muay Thai fight as well between Elias Mahamudi and Taigir Khalilov on this card as well. So lots of the I suppose the arts on this card, as there tends to be on the one championship cards. There is a big heavyweight fight on this card as well, and I just wanted to just quickly touch on the heavyweight championship before we get into looking at this card, I suppose, in full, because since the last time we spoke about one championship, the champ Anatoly Malyakin won. Well, he was the interim champion. The champion, he won the belt outright and in a dominant win. And I really think one championship have something with him, because he won the belt, light heavyweight champion as well, talking about going down to middleweight to take on Renier the Ridder, who he already beat for the light heavyweight title. And I think it's very, very interesting that they put him on one of the Lumpini cards, which is, obviously we were talking about the Amazon card today. It's a little bit more under the radar and things. And I just wonder, is that maybe apply for one championship to maybe bring them into the radar a little bit more? But maybe it was just the fact that he wanted to get a fight. But whatever way it happened anyway. I think what they have with him, and there's actually one of his teammates as well on this card as well, and as I mentioned, the heavyweight fight, Amir Aliakbari, who's thereafter maybe to fight him next, especially if he gets a win here, is on this card as well, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But after the fight, there was an article out I was reading about him wanting to fight Francis Ngannou. Obviously that's not going to happen unless something major happens. Well, you never know in mixed martial arts, but there is this thought out there that he might be one of the best heavyweights in the world. Or we always look at the chasing pack and look at the people outside of the UFC, and is there an argument for him being the best heavyweight outside of the UFC? Well, maybe if Francis Ngannou isn't there, maybe even with Francis Ngannou, who else? Ryan Bader and a few more as well. I definitely think there is. And I often come on here before these previews and I talk about, that chasing pack before maybe in the one previews or the Bellator previews, and look at how maybe they can get, one up on each other or make themselves a little bit special. And I think Malyakin could be that guy for one championship, because look, if he was to win the third belt, that'd be something massive. But if he's just gone out there and he's beating loads of heavyweights, and there's some heavyweights coming up as well. I mentioned Aliakbari versus Dustin Joynson. We'll talk about that as mentioned in a second. But you have the likes of, I know Bucheshi's only a few fights into his career, and Rug and a few more as well. But if he could put on a run there while holding two other belts as well, there's a real, there's a real argument that he is one of the best in the world. And for one championship, have that, it'd be absolutely fantastic for them. So just something I said, maybe it didn't necessarily go under the radar, but on this show, maybe because we didn't get a chance to talk about that, I do think that was a big important fight for one championship, and one that going forward we should definitely keep an eye on, I suppose. I just wonder as well what they're actually going to do with him, because if he goes down to middleweight, it's very hard to get down. I'm not sure what he weighed in at, and with the one championship wins, maybe it's a little bit easier to get down to middleweight. But I wonder how easy it'll be to go up and down to those weights. We see it all the time. How weight cutting affects people, but not only weight cutting. I think a bigger issue is moving weight classes, and we see people going for the champ status all the time, and it just doesn't work out for them. So, if, as I said again, I'll say it for the last time before I move on, if he could do that and continue to be dominant, it could be massive for one championship. So, let's get into some of these fights here. So on the 112 card, obviously, as we know, this is going down on the 14th, 8 p.m. Eastern time, Amazon Prime in the US and Canada, and you can check on One Championship's website for everywhere else to watch. I think you can get it on Watch. I think it's Watch One FC. I think it's still the website. But you can get, I think if you're in the UK, you can get it on YouTube and things like that. So it's very, very accessible. Another person, and the first fight I'm going to talk about is who can make one championship, dollars, or get him, a little bit of notoriety. I think is Garry Tonon, because even me as someone who, I watched the jiu-jitsu bouts on One Championship, and I pay a little bit of attention to it, but not not a massive jiu-jitsu fan. I'm not sitting down to watch the IBJJFs or whatever they are all the time. I know the name Garry Tonon. You know Garry Tonon, or a Gordon Ryan, or you might have heard of Buchecha, or you might have heard of Mikey Musumeci, or whatever it might be. There are a few names that people even involved in MMA would know, and the fact that Garry Tonon has come over to One Championship and become an MMA fighter, I think is big for them. Now, that is the most important part of it, because we see it all the time with people who, come from wrestling or come from BJJ, and they don't transition. They're BJJ fighters in MMA. They're wrestlers in MMA, and it very rarely works. The people who become the best in the field of MMA are the ones who are the best in MMA, right? If you have a really good background in jiu-jitsu or kickboxing or whatever, and you can make that a massive part of a well-rounded MMA game, you have a massive advantage. And it feels like Garry Tonon has done that, right? Now, you could, you're probably pointing me and go, here, Sean, he got knocked out by Tan Lee in 56 seconds, but he did. But Tan Lee is one of the best fighters in the world, so there's no shame in that either. But what I've seen in all of his other fights is a propensity to be an MMA fighter, and that is a great sign for his future. He's been fighting now in MMA. He made his debut in 2018. So, it's not as if he's only started, he's only been doing it a while. It's been a real, a trek for him now at this stage. He's had, 8 fights, is it? And won obviously 7 of them. So now is the time I think we'll see real movements and real improvements, I suppose, in his game. But what we've already seen is a fighter who's very good. And it's funny because this matchup, once we get into it in a second, it's a tough one. It's a tough one because I might as well get straight into it, because I watched Garry Tonon, right? And you're thinking, okay, he's a jiu-jitsu guy, he's coming over there, and you look at him and look, you're right in your I've written down notes here, moves well with his striking, gives different types of looks, jabs well, teeps well, and all of that. But then you look at Shamil Gasanov and you just think it's a little bit cleaner. Garry Tonon is quite clearly a guy who's put an unmerciful amount of work into his MMA game, into his striking, obviously into his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling and all that, which we'll talk about in a second. But there is no comparison to the cleanliness of the striking of Gasanov. Even though Gasanov isn't the best striker in the world, but he's a very technical striker. Just so technical in his way, it's a very tough ask for Tonon to compete against people like that. The word I used when I was thinking about this and writing my notes was astute. He looks just a little bit more astute than Tonon standing. He can wait a step to throw a shot rather than just throwing out the shot because you feel the need to throw it, if that makes a little bit of sense. I think Volkanovski's very, very good at that throughout his career. Aldo, a guy who's very, very good at that throughout his career. But some guys, they just come in and they throw it all out there. Now, not necessarily saying Tonon is that, but I think he needs to be that to kind of adjust his game from the, grapple only to MMA. But for Gasanov, I think it's very interesting to see what he does here, because he is a submission guy. If we're to be real about it, he is 12 wins, 13 wins, 2 decisions, 2 TKOs, and 9 submission wins. So, it's a little bit out of his game as well, even though I mentioned he is a very, very good striker. I think his wrestling is... the weird thing about his wrestling is, I would say if you were to ask, a wrestling coach or a wrestler out there who has the better technical wrestling, you'd probably say Gasanov, but Tonon's is oddly more effective because of the fear, I suppose, that is behind it. But Gasanov, when I mention the word fear, he's an absolutely fearless puncher. And he's a fearless puncher because he is very happy to go to the ground a lot of the time. Now, that is a key here, because will he be a fearless puncher? And a double question here: will he be happy to go to the ground with Tonon? I would say no. I would say he'd probably be trying to keep this standing. But that in itself is a big turn for Gasanov's game, because even though lots of these fights he does, keep them standing and does strike an awful lot, it's a lot of the time it is to set up takedowns, and all the time he goes for takedowns. And as I mentioned, his teammates with Will Maliakin is a real high level, so I'm sure he'll be prepared for that. And his, I mentioned the word astute. He is more astute from Lint. That, I think, will help him. And the fact that he is a little bit, I think, more controlled than Tonon will help him as well. But for Tonon, I think that the wilder striking a little bit, and it's not wild striking, wild compared to Gasanov, I suppose. It allows him for different angles to wrestle, and not just he goes in for double leg sometimes, but he pulls guard the odd time, literally, kind of falls on a leg. He got a lovely takedown, I believe in his last fight with a Kimura sweep takedown from the clinch, really good. And I think he will need to do that. He will need to find ways to set things up. He will need to close the distance. And I think when he's on the outside, I think he's better off doing almost ignoring the basics, right? And he jabs well all the time, but if you get into a jabbing battle with Gasanov, I think it's going to be an issue. I think he needs to kick the leg, kick high, I'd say a lot of kicks here, and try to keep your distance. If you are coming in, don't, maybe throw one jab. He jabs to the body actually very well. Jab to the body, turn, get out, get inside. If you are jabbing, jab to get inside to get a to get a body lock or something like that. It's a really fascinating matchup for me, because, as I said, I think the advantage here, and look, my pick is going to be Gasanov, because I think he has the ability to win the fight on the feet, and he's a good wrestler, so I think he has the ability to stop Tonon taking him down as well. But if you're Garry Tonon, all you need is one takedown, and you're going to have anyone in the world in a world of trouble. Now, is Gasanov the type of guy who will get taken down immediately sub? No, that's no way, I don't think. Now, maybe, no, when I say no way, Tonon can do that to anyone, let's say that. But is it a case of he gets taken down, he'll definitely get subbed immediately? No, not a hope, because Gasanov is so good on the ground as well. It's just a fascinating matchup for me. And I'm gonna pick Gasanov based on his takedown defense and his ability on the feet, but I'm not at all sure, not even slightly sure. So really, really, really looking forward to that one. Let's talk about the heavyweight fight next. As I mentioned at the start, the heavyweight division is in a real interesting place at the moment. Will Maliakin, if he continues on at heavyweight, or maybe they're doing an interim title again or something like that, or maybe we'll see what happens with him. But anyway, Amir Aliakbari is facing Dustin Joynson. And Joynson is he's a weird enough type of fighter. He's a massive man, very tall. I'm not sure exactly what height he is, but he's well over 6 foot anyway. Fights out of the orthodox stance, throws lots of high kicks. He's active on the outside. The one big issue for him, we saw it against Cyril Grushenko. He's very easily closed down. Grushenko closed the distance on him and just took him down very easily. Now, he never stopped fighting, and he was up for it, and he got up a few times, but he's just at the level of wrestler like that. And Amir Aliakbari is a very good wrestler as well. He finds it very, very tough. He has good combinations when he's allowed, but I don't think he's the best defensive fighter in the world. I do think what he does is cause problems with his length against guys who are not as fast as him. Like, for a big guy, he's a tall guy more than a big guy. Let's put it that way. Whereas Aliakbari is more kind of hefty or wide than him. I think he's a good athlete for his body shape, and look, he's a guy who I think will need to take deep improvement to beat someone like Aliakbari. Like Aliakbari as well. I remember I was looking at my notes from a couple of fights ago, and I was saying he's put on a bit of size, and he was better when he was smaller. But I think he has planned this, because now he's, or maybe it was an injury or something, one of those kind of middle fights there, but he looks to be faster again now. And that Brandon Vera fight, he looked very good fighting out of southpaw. The right hook was his main lead shot. He moves his head very well, which will be a big thing, I think, against Joynson. Because if Joynson, I said, not great defensively striking, and if he can't land his offensive work, because Amir Aliakbari even is moving his head, it's going to be a tough night for Joynson. But overall, Aliakbari is a wrestler, and he loves to wrestle. And we saw against Vera, he landed a big shot, but he was fighting with him on the feet, and there was no problem there. But once he got the fight to the ground, it was vicious ground and pound. And I think that'll be the difference between the Grushenko fight for Joynson and maybe this fight. I think if Aliakbari takes him down, he's going to finish him, and he's going to land some big shots. So, look, if you're Joynson, what do you need to do? I think you need to fight on the outside. You need to jab and keep it long and not throw as many shots, I think, as you normally do against Amir Aliakbari, and like hope to land one of those big shots on him. But I would suggest for Joynson as well, I haven't seen him kick loads, but he sometimes, he fights out of he kind of moves to the karate stance where he looks like that lead, to lead with the left leg. It's not the lead leg, but to lead with the left high kick. For someone like Aliakbari, who does move his head well, but moves his head down when you're throwing a jab, it could be a shot that would land, and something like that I suggest would be good for him, because even though Aliakbari is a big man, he's not as big and tall as Joynson. But yeah, I think for Amir Aliakbari, why do I keep calling him Amir Aliakbari? I think the job for him here is just go take him down. You don't stand with him on the feet too much. Although I do think he can beat him on the feet as well because of Johnson's defensive weaknesses. But make it easy on yourself. Take him down and get the ground about. And you know what? That's my pick. I think Aliakbari will take him down, and he will win that way. Speaking of Wei, Wei is in the next fight against Yuya Wakamatsu. It's been a very interesting time for Wakamatsu, who was viewed as one of the top fighters in the division in one championship, but it's 2 losses in a row now. He lost to Adriano Moraes, who one of the top fighters in the world, has a win over Demetrius Johnson and all that, no shame. But then he came back, it was 7 or 8 months later against Sung Hoon Woo, and everyone was kind of thinking, okay, yeah, he'll win this and maybe he'll be back, and maybe he could get a rematch with Demetrius or something like that. And then he got knocked out in under a round. This is a massive fight for him, and he needs to win it. He really does, to get back on track. 3 losses in a row would be an awful lot. Wei is a good fighter as well, and has some big fights on his ledger. Look, I suppose the two biggest fights of his career in the last while anyway are Danny Kinyard and Rhys McLaren. He's lost both of them, in fairness, but he has some big wins. He beat Daewon Kim back in 2021, and and he's won obviously most of his fights throughout his career. He's a good fighter as well. He's a very good pressure fighter, and for such a small man, the power he has is absolutely massive. I think he's around 12 knockout wins in his career, and you can see that by the way he fights. Very good at setting up shots by switching stances. He's a fighter, an unusual fighter, because he has a high output, but a low output of power strikes, maybe, which is you would think would be more of a usual game plan in MMA, but it really isn't, to be honest. People usually fight at one pace, but he's a very good two-pace fighter, I think. Good takedown defense when he wants to have it, and then bad takedown defense other times. I was watching one of his the Rhys McLaren fight, and he had a great stop one stage from takedown when he was kind of set for it, and then another time when he was kind of being pushed back a little bit, takedown came in, he got taken down very easily. So once he has his pressure on, but is composed with it, very good takedown defense. But if he loses his composure a bit, he's pushed back a bit, I think the takedown is there. If you are someone like Wakamatsu or someone else in the division. But just on the last thing on Wei, very good leg kicks as well. Not afraid to trade, but does get caught. For Yuya then on the other side of it, he's training out of Sanford MMA, and we see the strides they have made in the last while. Very, very good gym. Probably, is it the best gym in the world at the moment? It's hard to argue against that, to be honest. He's a lovely body lock takedown, lovely leg kicks, feints well, moves well defensively, although the last fight maybe was an issue there, but he likes the pressure as well, and he is that old school kind of pressure counter fighter, which is interesting, like who's going to win that pressure battle. Loves these 1-2s, insane speed, and the speed of the leg kick I always mention when I'm talking about Wakamatsu. I think he's so good there, but defensively is the issue with him again, and I'm really worried about my pick here, because look, I think if Wakamatsu comes into this fight the same way he came into the last fight, he'll lose, because I think Wei has massive power. He's fast enough to land it. He's good enough to land it. Like, if it was just like a 50-50 matchup, like who's going to win it, and if we leave out like the ability, I suppose, to take shots or whatever it might be, you would probably go with Wakamatsu, better all-around fighter, you would say. But what he did in his last fight, the opening he left in his last fight, if he does that again here, I think he could be in trouble. I really do think he could be in trouble. But will he still have the same openings left? Will he still enter the fight the way he entered that one? Like, will the kind of the wild pressure fighting still be there? You would have to think, fighting out of Sanford MMA with the great coaches there, Coach Stroud and Henry Hooft and all of them, you would have to think that has been cleaned up. And if it has, I do think he'll win. And I think we have seen before out of Wakamatsu enough to suggest that's definitely a possibility and a probability, maybe even. Was the last fight an anomaly? Was he kind of taking the eye off the ball, thinking, okay, I'm just getting back on track here? Maybe. So I'm going to go for Wakamatsu. Takedowns here. I think an early takedown for Wakamatsu would be absolutely ideal. I think that's what he'll do, and I think that's the way the fight will go. All right, let's move on to the next fight. This one now is one we can't talk about too much, because one of the lads in it has never had an MMA fight before. It's Walte rGoncalves against Danma. Goncalves MMA debut, number 3 ranked Muay Thai guy in one championship. Watching a couple of these Muay Thai fights, look, it's hard, I suppose, to take over anything from Muay Thai to MMA, although maybe it isn't, but vicious body kick or vicious leg kicker would be my two main takeaways. I was looking a bit on his Instagram and stuff, and he's training, I think, in Black House, and he was doing a bit of jiu-jitsu and things, but not much, not giving away much there. It'd be interesting to see how he fights. And his opponent, Danma, he is he's a Muay Thai fighter as well, but Muay Thai in MMA kind of. Southpaw, sits down well on his left hand and attacks, just goes straight forward and strikes. And I think an interesting one in this, right? He fought another Muay Thai guy, Dej, before, and he struck with him. Now, he eventually ended up taking him down after getting tired, but he did struggle. I think he lost that fight in the end. I think he should be wrestling earlier here, not gone out to strike. But look, is that the type of fight he's always going to give? And is that why the matchmakers maybe made this fight? Because they know, and someone who's on in his debut, in MMA should be getting that type of matchmaking. So I'm not saying to set up fight for him or anything like that. Fight should be set up so to make him easier at that stage in your career. But he's not a great wrestler, but he's a better wrestler than Muay Thai fighters, I don't know. I really don't know. Look, if that fight is to go, is the fight you're going to go on, Goncalves looks like he's a hard hitter. He's a little bit younger than Dej was at that time. Will the fight in the same way? I think it probably will. So I'm going to go with Goncalves. Based on very little now, it could be, he could never wrestle a day in his life and Bonmac could go out and take him straight down and submit him, which is, a possibility. But let's wait and see on that one. It should be a fun Muay Thai striking clinic anyway. And the last MMA fight in the card, this is my favorite fight on this card, and these are two very good fighters. One of them especially, I think, and I've watched him before, and I've done a preview for one of his fights before, but maybe I didn't realize how good he was, and that's Akbar Abdullaev. I think he's one of the best prospects in the world. He is fantastic. I don't see any weakness in him. He's 9-0, 8 KOs, 1 sub. It seems to be a team of today, but his head movement is very good. Loves looking for that vaulted uppercut where he's vaulted himself, The only thing is he does eat a few shots, but he is the type of guy who knows that if he lands his shot and you land your shot, his shot is going to win every single time. He has vicious power, vicious leg kicks. That inside hook is so lovely. The shot that he lands with the left hook with just massive power, great sprawl and brawl, good takedown defense. A really, really, really top class boxer. And his opponent, Aaron Canarte, 10-0. He's more of a Muay Thai fighter, lifts that front leg, lovely leg kicks, very quick to step into range, lovely straight right hand. The only issue I would say with him is sometimes he rushes it and he kind of falls on his shots. If he does that against Akbar, he'll be knocked out straight away. He needs to cut that out of his game, or it'll be a big issue. He has a good sprawl too. This is going to be a striking matchup, I think, unless there's something I haven't seen from either man. But I would say Canarte has. I've seen more of him in the world. All of Abdullaev's fights have basically been knockouts. Canarte has a few subs. Looks for subs anyway. Almost got a Van Flu last time. And do you know the one thing I would say about Canarte? He doesn't look that strong, when he's kind of lining up for the fight. But then when he's in the fight and he's on top on the ground, he's a block of a man for his size. He really is. And I just wonder if he can take Abdullaev down, what the fight will look like then. I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm really not sure. But I suppose we'll wait and see and we'll find out. But this is a fantastic fight. I really, really love this fight. I'm going to pick Akbar Abdullaev to win it because I just think he's fantastic. I think, as I said, I think he's one of the best prospects in the world, and I think he'll show that here. But a very, very, very good fight and a good test for Abdullaev, but a good test for both men. So yeah, very interesting. All right, I'll leave it there. Just go quickly through my picks again. I'm going with Gasanov. I'm going with Aliakbari. I'm going with Wakamatsu. I'll pick Walte rGoncalves, even though I don't know why. And I'm going to go with Akbar Abdullaev to win as well. So, yeah, that's it for me. Let me know in the comment section below who you're picking, who's your lock of the night for this card. And we'll leave it there. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com. And I'll see you all next time.